Hey everyone! Today we're diving into a question that might seem a little strange, but is actually really interesting. Why don't birds get shocked when they sit on power lines?
It's actually quite simple. When a bird sits on a single wire, it doesn't complete the electrical circuit. Electricity flows along the wire, but since both of the bird's feet are on the same wire, there's no difference in voltage. Without that difference, electricity can't flow through the bird's body.
So as long as the bird stays on just one wire, it's safe, right? But what happens if it touches another wire or the ground?
Exactly. The bird is safe as long as it's just on one wire. But if the bird touches another wire with a different voltage, or anything that's grounded, it completes the electrical circuit, and that's when the bird gets shocked. But let's dive a little deeper into why this happens. You see, for electricity to flow, it needs a path. The path needs to have a difference in electrical potential, or voltage. So the bird is only at risk if it creates that path by touching something that has a different voltage.
Wait, does that mean a bird would be safe if it just stayed on a power line no matter what?
Well, almost. If the bird just stays on the wire, it's fine. But it's a little more complicated if the bird touches something like a power pole, which is grounded. The pole is at 0 volts, so if the bird touches it, the difference in voltage between the wire and the pole would cause electricity to flow through the bird.
That's pretty wild. So how come humans don't get the same treatment? We don't see people sitting on power lines without getting shocked.
Good point. Humans are bigger, and the electrical potential difference is much more significant. When a human touches a power line, their body provides a much easier path for the electricity to flow through. Since our bodies are made of mostly water, they conduct electricity very well. The current tries to flow through us because we provide a better path to the ground or another voltage source.
That makes sense. But are there any other animals that can sit on power lines safely, like birds?
That's an interesting question. While birds are the most common animals you'll see on power lines, other animals, like squirrels, can also sit on power lines without getting shocked. But if they bridge a gap by touching both the power line and a grounded object, then they'll get shocked, just like a bird would if it touched another wire or the ground.
Wow! So animals can also be at risk if they complete that circuit, even if they're just hanging out on the wires.
Exactly. The key here is understanding that for electricity to flow, it needs a path that has a voltage difference. As long as that path is avoided, the animals are safe.
But why is the voltage difference so important? Can you explain a little more about how electricity flows and how it affects things like wires and animals?
Absolutely. So let's break it down. Voltage is essentially the pressure that pushes electricity through a conductor. When the voltage is different between 2 points, electricity will flow from the higher voltage to the lower voltage in an attempt to balance things out. It's like water flowing from a higher point to a lower point to equalize the pressure. Now, if you're just touching one wire that's at a certain voltage, there's no way for that electricity to flow through you. But if you touch another wire, or the ground, which are at different voltage levels, you're essentially completing a path for the current to flow through you, and that's where things go wrong.
That makes a lot of sense. So do power companies have to worry about this in terms of safety, like for people who might come into contact with power lines?
Yes, absolutely. Power companies put a lot of effort into designing the system so that people and animals don't come into contact with the high voltage parts. For instance, they have safety regulations for how far power lines should be from the ground, and they use insulation to prevent contact with the live wires. In fact, power lines are often hung at great heights, and there are specialized crews who go out and maintain them to make sure they're safe for everyone.
That's really reassuring to know. And what about the power poles themselves? What keeps them from shocking someone if they touch them?
Great question. Power poles are usually grounded, meaning they're connected to the earth to disperse any electricity safely. This grounding ensures that the pole itself doesn't become a source of electrical danger. However, if someone were to climb the pole or touch both the pole and another wire at the same time, that could create a dangerous situation because they would be completing the circuit.
So grounding is like a safety feature for the pole, but it can still be dangerous if someone touches both parts at the same time?
Exactly. The grounding is a safety measure, but the danger arises if you make contact with the ground and the live wire at the same time, completing the circuit.
And that's why we see so many warnings around power lines and electrical equipment. It's all about staying safe and avoiding completing that dangerous path.
Yes, exactly. It's all about respecting electricity's power and making sure it has the right path to travel along. So, while the birds are perfectly safe on the lines, we've got to make sure to keep our distance.
Thanks, Smarty. I think we all have a better understanding of how electricity works with power lines and why certain animals can sit on them without getting shocked.
You're welcome. It's always fun to share this stuff, and I hope it helps everyone appreciate how interesting the world of electricity is, even in everyday life.
So to wrap it all up, the next time you see a bird sitting on a high voltage line, you can relax. It's safe. Just make sure you keep your distance. Thanks for listening. And remember, electricity is powerful, but understandable when you know the science behind it. Stay safe out there. Now that we've covered the basics, let's explore a bit more about why voltage levels matter. Why are high voltage power lines so dangerous? And what precautions do power plants take to ensure safety?
High voltage power lines are dangerous because they carry a tremendous amount of energy. Voltage is what gives electricity its push, and the higher the voltage, the more potential there is for it to cause damage. However, power plants and utility companies go to great lengths to manage this risk. For instance, they use specialized equipment to step down the voltage when it gets to your home, ensuring that it's safe for household use. This process involves transformers, which reduce the high voltage too.
That's incredible. It sounds like there's a lot of engineering involved to make sure the power we use is safe. But are there any instances where these precautions fail?
While it's rare, failures can happen. For example, if there's a malfunction in a transformer or an electrical fault in the system, it can cause power surges or outages. That's why the system is monitored so closely, and why there are backup measures like circuit breakers in place to stop the flow of electricity in case something goes wrong.
And when there is a power outage, how do utilities fix the problem?
Utilities have response teams that are trained to quickly identify the cause of the outage. They use monitoring systems that alert them to problems and send crews out to repair any damage. Sometimes, they even use drones to inspect power lines and other equipment, making the repair process faster and safer.